Give it a couple seconds. Okay. Hello and Shavua Tov. It's already Tuesday. Is it Wednesday or Tuesday? I've lost track at this point. It is Tuesday. It's Tuesday and it's already 6:30, and I'm quite behind this week on my weekly Parsha reading. And last week I went back to a pre-recorded format, which I quite prefer in a way, but I just didn't have the time this week. So here I am back again in my live stream format. And not only am I late with the Parsha reading for you guys, but that means that I'm behind on my own personal schedule, which is not good. So this is my first read through for the week. I really do try to start my read through on Sundays and read Aliyah by Aliyah in Hebrew throughout the week. And I have not done that this week. So this is just, better late than never. So I think it's good to get in this practice of really staying on a schedule, especially when it comes to prayer and Torah, because you can always find reasons for that to just be, like after all of the different things you have going on in the day. And I've been extremely busy, so it's not a good excuse. I've been pushing it off. But point being is that when you have a schedule, when you have sort of a rhythm, even when you're thrown off of that rhythm, you usually don't stray too far. So already I can say this is better to be reading doing like the full Parsha read through on a Tuesday, and Tuesday being late rather than not doing it at all, which, I have done before too. So all that being said, I'm excited to read this one. This is Parashat Mishpatim, which is a whole bunch of laws that we're taught are sometimes a bit natural and obvious, like, in other words, things that basic societies need in order to function and survive and thrive. So Mishpatim, in contrast to Hukim, which are Jewish laws that are quite a bit harder to understand in terms of why we have certain laws and such. So anyway, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and read the intro, even also just for myself, because I always like to read the intros of my Chumash, which talks about the name of the Parsha. So let's see what we pick up just from that first on the name of the Parsha. Mishpatim means civil and criminal laws, which are self-understood. As Rashi comments, laws are recorded in the Torah that if they had not been given, it would have been appropriate to institute them in any case, which is what I just commented. Furthermore, these laws are self-evident not only to the Jewish people, but also to the nations of the world, such that it is feasible that a secular law is identical to a Jewish law, which this is one of the 7 Noahide laws for non-Jewish people to set up systems of law and like courts of justice and such. So for this reason, it is stated that at the beginning of the Parsha, and these are the laws, to which Rashi comments, these are also from Sinai, meaning that even these laws, which are traditionally dictated by the human mind, must be observed not because of their intellectual credibility, but because they are God's commands. It is only that God wanted these commands to be understood by man. For this reason, these laws are placed before them and not before the nations, even when their decision would coincide, since their laws are based on human reason, and it is necessary to observe our precepts as divine decrees. At a deeper level, it could be argued that the concept of Mishpatim from Sinai implies that the very essence of rationality itself was also implanted at Sinai. If it were not for the criminal and civil laws being given at Sinai, human intelligence would not have been able to fathom them, just like the other super-rational commandments. The rational nature of the laws is a result of God's will, which is intrinsically unfathomable, being invested in his Torah. Since the Torah is a record and register which was used to create the world, these laws became compatible with the fabric of the world and commensurate with human understanding. Consequently, the human mind, including that of non-Jews, naturally tends towards the wisdom of God, which is precisely what was communicated at Sinai. Interesting. I like that. Okay, so let's dive in. I'm not going to read the headers, but I wish you guys could see them. It's nice because the Chumash will actually have headers for different categories of laws. So like the first section is the laws of slaves. The second is laws of assault and kidnapping. So it's nice to be able to see those categorizations. All right. 1 second. I'm just gonna I turned on the air conditioning. Okay, so I won't be so cold. Okay, so Parashat Mishpatim. And these are the laws that you should set before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave who is sold to slavery by the court because he was a thief, he shall work for 6 years, but in the 7th year he is to be released without liability. If he was unmarried when he entered service, he may not marry a non-Jewish slave woman during his period of service. He shall be released unmarried. If he is married to a Jewish woman when he enters service, the master must provide food for the wife and children until he is released with his wife. If his master gives him a non-Jewish slave woman for a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, then when it is time to dismiss the Hebrew slave, the woman and her children will remain her master's property, and he is dismissed alone. If the slave says, I love my master, my non-Jewish wife, and my children, I will not go free, his master shall bring him to the judges of the Jewish court who sold him the slave in the first place. Standing the slave next to a door which is attached to a doorpost, his master shall pierce his right ear with a pointed tool. He must then serve his master forever until the Jubilee year. If a man sells his daughter as a child's maidservant, she shall not be freed the same way that non-Jewish male slaves are released through the loss of a tooth or an eye. Rather, she must work for 6 years, or until the Jubilee year, or until she shows signs of puberty, whichever comes first. If she is displeasing to her master and he decides not to designate her for himself as a future wife, an act which the Torah recommends, then he must let her be redeemed. If he does betray her by not designating her as his future wife, he does not have the right to sell her to another person. If the master chooses instead to designate her for his son, he must treat her like any other girl, providing for her food, clothing, and marital relations. If he keeps a maidservant as a wife and then he takes another wife for himself, he may not diminish from the maidservant her sustenance, her clothing, or her times of marital relations. If he does not do these 3 things, designate her for himself, for his son, or redeem her, she shall be released without liability or payment if she shows signs of puberty. A person who strikes another man is only put to death if the victim dies. If a person did not ambush another and he did not intend to kill him, but God orchestrated it to happen to him, then I'll make a place for you where he can find refuge. Only if a man plots deliberately against another Jew to kill him, and his strike is intended to kill, should he be put to death. This applies even to a priest who wishes to serve on my altar. If a person strikes his father or his mother, causing a bruise, he must be put to death through strangulation. If a person kidnaps a man and witnesses found him in his possession before he was sold, he shall be put to death by strangulation. A person who curses his father or mother shall be put to death through stoning. If 2 men quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with a fist, and he does not die but is confined to his bed, then the aggressor is put in jail until it is determined if the victim will survive. If he gets up and walks about outside unaided, then the aggressor is acquitted. He need only give compensation for the victim's inability to work, and he must pay all his medical fees. If a man strikes his male or female non-Jewish slave with a rod that is capable of inflicting a fatal wound, and the slave dies under his hand, within 24 hours, the slave's death must be avenged. The killer is executed by the sword. However, if the slave survives for a day or 2, 24 hours, he shall not be avenged because he is his master's property. If 2 men quarrel with each other and accidentally hit a pregnant woman and she miscarries, but the woman does not suffer fatal injury, the assailant must pay a penalty. When the woman's husband takes him to court and makes demands of him, then he must give compensation according to the judge's orders. If there's a fatal injury to the woman, you shall give a life for a life, alternatively, full compensation for her life. Compensation must be paid, the value of an eye for an eye, injury, the value of a tooth for a tooth, injury. Sorry, I'm reading that incorrectly. The value of a tooth for a tooth injury, the value of a hand for a hand injury, and the value of a foot for a foot injury. Compensation must be paid for pain suffered in the following cases: the value of a burn for a burn, the value of a wound for a wound, plus compensation for loss of income, healing, embarrassment when appropriate, and the value of a bruise for a bruise. If a man strikes the eye of his male non-Jewish slave or the eye of his female non-Jewish slave and destroys it, he shall set him free in compensation for his eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his male non-Jewish slave or the tooth of his female non-Jewish slave, he shall set him free in return for his tooth. If an ox or any other animal gores and kills a man or a woman, the ox must be stoned. After the ox's sentence, even if it is slaughtered and not stoned, its flesh may not be eaten, for benefit be derived from it, nor benefit be derived from it. The owner of the ox is innocent. If it is a habitually goring ox, both yesterday and the day before, on 3 occasions, and its owner had been warned in the presence of witnesses, but he did not guard the ox properly, and it kills a man or a woman, then the ox shall be stoned. Also, its owner is punished with death through the hands of heaven. Therefore, an atonement fine must be imposed upon him. He must give whatever is assessed against him in order to redeem his soul. This law is also applied to a person whose animal gores a young boy or a young girl. If an ox gores a non-Jewish male slave or female slave, the owner of the ox must give a fixed penalty of 30 shekels of silver to the slave's master. The bull is stoned. If a person opens a cover of a pit, or if a person digs an existing pit, making it larger, and does not cover it, and then an ox or a donkey or any other animal falls into it, the one reasonable for the pit must pay compensation, either giving money to its owner or any produce of value. The dead animal belongs to its original owner. If a man's ox strikes his fellow's ox and it dies, the owner of the attacking ox pays half the value of the loss, up to the value of the attacking ox. Thus, if both oxen are of equal value, they could settle by selling the live bull and dividing the money retrieved for it and dividing the value of the carcass. Alternatively, if it was known to be a habitually goring ox, since yesterday and the day before it gored 3 times, and its owner does not watch it, he must pay full compensation, an ox for an ox. The dead animal belongs to its original owner. If a man steals an ox or a lamb and slaughters it or sells it, he must repay 5 oxen for the ox or 4 sheep for the lamb. This only applies to oxen and sheep. If a person strikes and kills a thief who is discovered tunneling into his house, it is not considered bloodshed. He is not guilty of murder. If the sun shone upon him, it is obvious that the thief did not intend to kill, it is considered bloodshed. The thief must pay full compensation for what he stole. If he has no money, he shall be sold to slavery for his theft. If the stolen article is found in his possession, whether a live ox, a donkey, or a lamb, or any other object, he must pay double. If a man leads his animal into a field or a vineyard, whether he lets his animal loose and it tramples crops or it eats in another's fields, he must pay compensation with land from the best of his field or the best of his vineyard. If a fire goes forth even by itself and spreads through thorns to destroy a stack of grain or standing grain, or it scorched a plowed field requiring it to be plowed again, the one who ignited the fire must pay compensation even though he lit the fire in his own property. If a person gives his friend money or articles for safekeeping and does not pay him for his services, and they are stolen from the man's house, then if the thief is found, he must pay twofold to the owner. If the thief is not found, the homeowner must approach the judges. If he is challenged by the owner to swear an oath that he has not laid his hand upon his friend's property, and then he is exempt from compensation, since he was not paid for his services. In every case of dishonesty, when swearing an oath, whether it is about an ox, about a donkey, about a lamb, about a garment, or about any lost article, if a witness will say that this thing here is the very thing which you swore about, saying that it was not in your possession, then the claims of both parties shall come to the judges, and whoever the judges declare guilty must pay twofold to his friend. If a man gives his friend a donkey, an ox, a lamb, or any animal for safekeeping, and pays him for his services, and it dies, breaks a limb, or is captured without witnesses, then the dispute between the two of them is decided by the guardian swearing an oath to God that he did not lay his hand upon his friend's property or to use it for himself. Its owner must accept the oath, and the guardian does not pay. However, it is stolen from him, he must pay its owner. If the animal, is torn apart by a wild beast, he may bring witnesses to prove that he was not negligent with it, and then he does not have to pay compensation for the torn animal for so long as he could not possibly have saved it. If a person borrows an animal from his friend and breaks its limb or dies, and it breaks a limb or dies, and its owner is not working for the borrower, he must pay compensation. If its owner is working for the borrower, he shall not pay. If the article was hired, it came into his possession for its hiring fee. If a man seduces a virgin who is not married and sleeps with her, he must pay a dowry and must marry her. If her father refuses to give her to him in marriage, he must pay a fixed weight of 50 silver shekels, which is the usual dowry money for virgins. Do not allow a sorceress or sorcerer to live. Any person who sleeps with an animal must be put to death by stoning. Whoever slaughters to gods other than God alone must be destroyed and put to death. You should not verbally harass a foreigner, i.e., a convert, nor oppress him by robbing his property, because you are foreigners in the land of Egypt. You shall not oppress any person, especially a widow or orphan. If you do oppress him, beware, for if he cries out to me, I will hear his cry, and my anger will be kindled, and I will kill you with the sword. Furthermore, there will not be witnesses to your death, so your wives shall be chained widows, and your orphaned children will be unable to inherit your property. When you lend money, prioritize first my people, the Jews, the poor person, and the inhabitant of your city who is with you. If you know he cannot yet repay your loan, do not behave towards him as a lender, claiming your money forcibly. Do not place interest payments upon him. If he fails to pay the loan on time and you take your friend's daytime garment as security, you must return it to him for the entire day until the sun sets. You must also return his night garments by night, for it is his only covering. It is his garment for his skin. With what shall he sleep? If he cries out to me, I will listen because I am compassionate. Do not curse a judge. Do not curse a leader among your people. Do not delay your offering of first fruit when it ripens, or your offering of truma. You must present me the firstborn of your sons to be redeemed by the priest after 30 days. You must do likewise with your ox and with your sheep. Redeem it after 30 days, but at the very minimum, for 7 days it shall be with its mother, and on the 8th day you may give it to me. If you will be holy men, you will be mine. Do not eat flesh that is torn off in the field or any other place. Throw it to the dogs or sell it to a non-Jew. Do not listen to a false report. Do not associate with a wicked person who is making a false claim to be a corrupt witness. Do not conform to the majority who are perverting justice. Do not condone a lawsuit in which justice was perverted by the majority. Do not accord honor or be biased towards a poor man in his lawsuit. If you come across your enemy's ox or stray donkey, you must return it to him. Perhaps if you would see your enemy's donkey lying under its load, you would want to refrain from helping him. However, you must help him unload. Do not pervert the judgment of your poor man in his lawsuit. Distance yourself from anything false. Do not kill a convicted person if fresh evidence arises before his execution, suggesting that he is innocent, or one who has been vindicated by the court, even if fresh evidence arises, suggesting that he is guilty. For I will not let a guilty person escape punishment. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of those who can see it, such as Torah scholars, and corrupts righteous words. Do not oppress a foreigner, a convert, for you know the feelings of the foreigner, since you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. 6 years you may sow your land and gather in its produce, but in the 7th year you shall cease to work in it and refrain from eating its fruit. The poor among your people shall eat from it without separating tithes, and what they leave over will be eaten by the beasts of the field. This also applies to your vineyard and to your olive grove. 6 days you may do your work, but on the 7th day you must rest, even in the 7th year, in order that your ox and your donkey shall rest in the field, and your maidservant's son and the resident alien shall be refreshed. You should be careful to keep everything that I have said to you. Do not mention the name of gods of others. You should not cause a non-Jew to make heard the name of his idol through your mouth. 3 times you shall celebrate for me during the year. Observe the festival of Matzot. Eat matzot for 7 days as I have commanded you at the appointed time of the month of springtime, since this is when you left Egypt. When the Jewish people come to be seen before me on festivals, they shall not appear before me empty-handed. Rather, they must come with a burnt offering. And the festival of the harvest, Shavuot, which is a time of bringing first fruits of your crops, which you will sow in the field. And the festival of the ingathering, Sukkot, at the end of the year, when you gather your produce from the field into the house before the rain starts. 3 times during the year, all your males must appear before the Lord God. Do not slaughter the blood of my Pesach sacrifice until you destroy any chametz that is in your possession. The fat of my festive sacrifice must not be left overnight until morning. Bring to the house of God, your God, the choicest of the first fruits of your soil, even in the 7th year. Do not cook a tender young animal in its mother's milk. When you will sin with the golden calf, the Shekhinah will not accompany you personally. Rather, it will send an angel before you to guard you on the way, to guard you on the way, and to bring you to the place that I have prepared to give you. Beware of him and listen to him, for my name is associated with him. Do not rebel against him, for he will not forgive your transgression, since he never sins himself. But if you listen to his voice and do all that I say, I will be the enemy of your enemies, and I will oppress your oppressors. For my angel will go before you and bring you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will destroy them. Do not bow down to their gods. Do not worship them, and do not follow their practices. Rather, you should demolish your gods and completely shatter their stones, which they stand on, so as to bow down to them. You shall worship God, your God, and he will bless your food and your drink. I will banish illness from among you. If you obey my will, then there will not be a woman who miscarries or a barren woman in your land. I will cause the days of all your lives to be full. I will send my terror ahead of you, and I will throw all the people among whom you will come into confusion. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and flee from you. I will send the hornet swarms before you that will strike them in the eyes and inject venom into them, and they will drive out the Hittites, the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you. I will not drive them away from you in 1 year, lest the land become depopulated, and the beasts of the field will become too many for you to contend with. Little by little I will drive them away from you, until you have increased and can occupy the land. I will set your borders from the Reed Sea to the Philistine Sea, and from the desert to the river Euphrates. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you will drive them away from you. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, since they may cause you to sin against me, and that you will worship their gods, which will be a trap for you. To Moshe he said, Go up to God, you and Aaron, Nadav and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel, and bow down from afar. Moshe alone shall approach the fog where God is, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not go up with them. On the same day Moshe came and told the people all the words of God about separating from their wives and making a boundary around the mountain, and all the laws of the Noahide code, and the laws of Shabbat, honoring parents, the red heifer, and the civil laws which were given at Meorah. All the people answered in unison and said, All the words that God has spoken, we will do. Moshe wrote down all of God's words from the beginning of the Chumash until the giving of the Torah. On the 5th of Sivan, he arose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 stone monuments for the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent the firstborn of the children of Israel, and they offered up burnt offerings, and they slaughtered bulls as peace offerings to God. Moshe took half the blood and put it into 2 basins, and half the blood he cast onto the altar. He took the book of the covenant from the beginning of the Chumash to the giving of the Torah, plus the commandments they were given at Meorah, and read it aloud to the people so the people could hear. And they said, We will do and we will hear everything that God has said. Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it on the people, and he said, This is the blood of the covenant which God has made with you regarding all these words. Moshe and Aaron, Nadav and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel, and beneath his feet was something like a sapphire brick, which God had placed before him to remember the pain of Israel's enslavement, which was as clear as the heavens, shining light, which signified that the Jewish people had been redeemed. Upon Nadav and Abihu and the elders, the nobles of the children of Israel, he did not lay his hand, even though they deserved it for looking directly at God. They looked at God while they ate and drank. God said to Moshe, Come up to me to the mountain and remain there, and I will give you the stone tablets which incorporate the entire Torah and mitzvah, which I have written to instruct them. Moshe arose with Yehoshua his servant to the boundary. Since Yehoshua could go no further, he pitched his tent there, and Moshe went up to the mountain of God. As he left the camp, he said to the elders, Wait for us here and be ready to judge any dispute until we return to you. Look, Aaron and Hur, the son of Miriam and Caleb, are with you. Whoever has a legal case should approach them. Moshe ascended the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of God rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered the mountain for 6 days. He called to Moshe on the 7th day from within the cloud to say the 10 Commandments. The appearance of the glory of God was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain before the eyes of the children of Israel. Moshe came into a path within the cloud, and he went up to the mountain. Moshe was upon the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. And that's it. That is Parashat Mishpatim. I forgot how epic that is, actually. And I always like this parsha. I always forget how much I like it. It's really interesting to see the different categories of laws that don't seem applicable to us now, but they probably are in ways that maybe we don't even actually understand. And of course, what always calls out to me are the two mitzvot regarding converts, which they refer to here as strangers. So it kind of varies different by Chumash, from Chumash to Chumash, like whether they refer to that as like a resident alien versus a convert like me. So it's always interesting to look into that. And I'm excited to read the commentary from this particular Chumash, which is new for me this year, to see if they have any interesting insights on that piece. And what called out to me the most, because I think about this a lot, because frankly I go a little bit back and forth on it, but it's quite explicit the way that it's mentioned here. The Mishpatim about not even uttering the name of other people's gods. So like even if you're referencing another religion, to use the name of their gods and their idols, even to explain a concept that might be countering their beliefs, or basically framing it in such a way that you're asserting that you don't believe that these idols are gods, like you still shouldn't actually utter those words. So that's why a lot of like frum Jews will say, I think they say Yoshke, I think they say, I say JC sometimes, but I'm going to be a lot stricter on that, because I do say the full JC, like I don't say the C, but I'll say the J. If I'm talking to Christian or referring to, just basically having a conversation where even if I'm countering it, like I'll use that word. So I'm even more mindful of that. And I always find that to be very interesting in terms of being that much removed from idolatry to the point where you won't even utter the words. So I take that one really to heart. I think it's incredibly important, because I feel like idolatry is kind of one of the big ones. And I'm using that term like not just for literal idols, but I think the idea and the concept of idolatry is incredibly pervasive in our culture, and incredibly problematic today, and super duper relevant. And I think a lot of people don't actually think about it like that. I think a lot of people, myself included in the past, think about idolatry as being this like very removed thing. Like if you grow up in Western culture, you might think it's not really relevant to you, because we don't really bow to idols, or it's not really a common thing that you see in Western cultures, especially like Christian cultures, like America and such. And yeah, it just kind of seems kind of old school, I guess. So I feel like a lot of people don't think about idolatry that much, but I extended the concept of idolatry to really giving power to anything other than God, and placing things, even like money or people and celebrities. I think that is modern day idolatry to me, and I have very strong views on that. So it's something I think about a lot. So it's just yeah, that's kind of the piece that called out to me, in addition to the convert piece in here. Anyway, that I'm so happy I read that. I feel better. Like I feel more grounded from having read that too, because I've been really off my schedule, my learning schedule this week, and actually, frankly, into like the latter half of last week. So I need to get back into the rhythm. And this reminds me, and I'm also so glad that I'm doing this weekly Parsha reading, even if I'm a little bit late, and even if the format and the quality might change a little bit week from week. I'm also doing these Parsha in a minute videos, minute or under, more or less. I'm trying to do, I'm sharing them on Instagram. I posted the first one here on my YouTube channel, but last week I was too busy, so I didn't post it. But you can find those on my Instagram, at least, hopefully consistently, which is at Meorah, if you don't follow me there. And that's also really fun for me too. It's also fun to edit, but I like that I'm doing both of these things, because it kind of, it gives me accountability and it keeps me on track. And yeah, it's just a very, like, I feel like it's one of those things that no matter how busy you are in the week, like if you can't make time for Torah, if you can't make time for prayer, you just got to readjust your priorities. So I'm glad I'm doing this, and I'm glad you guys joined along too. So really appreciate that. And missed a lot of hellos from people, but maybe you guys have hopped off. But I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for joining me, and I'm wishing you guys a really nice week. We're already well into the week at this point, but I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. Shavua Tov and Lechaot. Bye.